September 2025, Atlantic Ocean. Operation Iron Reprisal is already underway. NATO has launched a full-scale strike on the United States. 31 allied nations trying to breach the most heavily defended homeland on Earth. It didn't start with a single shot. It started with a fracture. After pulling out of its European bases, the United States quits NATO and cuts off all access to shared systems. Satellites, intelligence feeds, GPS, gone. So, NATO moves fast. The goal isn't occupation, it's disruption. Break U.S. command, disarm key forces, and force the U.S. to the table before things spiral out of control. Doing that means crossing 3,000 miles of ocean without American logistics, satellites, or airlift. It's the most ambitious coalition strike in modern history. Here's the twist. They know each other. They trained side by side for decades. Now they're using that playbook against each other. And sure, NATO's a defensive alliance, but this is a sandbox scenario, and that line's already been crossed. I know it's unlikely, but I just wanted to explore how it might go. So let's walk through it. The mission is simple on paper. Force a U.S. surrender without triggering mass civilian casualties. No nuclear weapons, no leveling cities. Just speed, pressure, and surgical strikes. NATO gives a 96-hour warning. Evacuation protocols go active. Troops mobilize. Entire naval groups deploy under full radio silence. But something becomes clear almost immediately. Without U.S. support, NATO is flying half blind. As I said, there's no GPS, at least not the American kind. They're stuck with Europe's Galileo system. Slower, easier to jam, and never tested in combat. It's not that they have nothing, it's that what they have can't match what they just lost. There's no U.S. satellite intelligence, live drone feeds, or global logistics network. And much of NATO's top gear, like F-35s, Blackhawks, and HIMARS, still depends on U.S. parts, software updates, and deep maintenance you can't do in the field. Even without U.S. networks, NATO's F-35 can still share data with each other. But they've lost the American intel web that fuses satellites, sensors, and radar into a single picture. And with no spare parts coming in, every flight takes a toll on the fleet. Still, they push forward. Because if they hesitate, the window closes, and they know it. Staging begins in Greenland, Iceland, the Azores, and Canada. Troops deploy to remote airstrips. Cargo ships are loaded with fuel, ammo, armor, and supplies. Convoys stretch across the Atlantic, tightly packed and heavily protected. The invasion is split into 3 coordinated thrusts. The main landing force hits the Virginia coast, targeting Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval base on Earth. A second force strikes the Florida Panhandle, aiming to capture Eglin Air Force Base and split U.S. coastal defense. A third push moves south from Canada into Maine and Michigan, using European troops stationed under joint training programs. Convoys form in the Atlantic. NATO destroyers, leased tankers, and amphibious assault ships escorting wave after wave of cargo vessels. They rely on Galileo for navigation and a patchwork of national satellites for intel. But without U.S. ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, they're operating with degraded precision. Missile strikes are less accurate. Reaction time is slower. Coordination gets messy. And if this doesn't work fast, it doesn't work at all. Before sunrise, the East Coast lights up. Cruise missiles slam into American air bases from Virginia to Georgia. RAF Typhoons and French Rafales escort NATO paratroopers onto major highways. They come in behind a wave of missiles, buying them 30 minutes of chaos before U.S. jets take control again. Special forces raid a U.S. missile site in North Dakota. Helicopters hit beachheads near Norfolk. The fleet pushes in low and fast. The objective: seize the port, crater the docks, and open a corridor for follow-on armor. It's a bold move, but the U.S. reacts instantly. Patriot missile batteries intercept the first waves of missiles. Aegis destroyers pick off incoming threats. F-22 Raptors streak into the sky over Virginia. Within hours, the 82nd Airborne locks down critical roads. The 101st lifts out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Marines from Camp Lejeune deploy mobile anti-ship missiles along the coast. One French ship falls behind, exposed. A U.S. submarine, positioned in the Atlantic, takes the shot. Hundreds of troops never make it to the beach. NATO hits the coast, but they're already bleeding. From inland positions, U.S. HIMARS launch GPS-guided rockets into landing zones. Apache helicopters pick off stalled vehicles. Coastal batteries fire naval strike missiles. long-range precision weapons that slam into NATO's escort ships. Amphibious transports take direct hits. Troops hit the water. Armor sinks before it ever rolls. B-1 bombers flying from Dyess Air Force Base in Texas, well outside NATO's strike radius, launch long-range anti-ship missiles into the convoy. And American armor? It's on the move. Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, Paladin artillery, all rolling in from Georgia, Kentucky, and Texas by rail. The U.S. uses its own domestic infrastructure to full advantage. Within 24 hours, heavy armor is moving faster than NATO drones can track it. That's what interior lines gets you. The defenders move faster, fight closer, and resupply easier. NATO doesn't have that, and now it shows. Then the cyber war begins. NATO hits hard, East Coast infrastructure buckles, GPS signals are spoofed, commercial drones veer off course, power outages hit parts of Virginia and New York, rail networks glitch, 911 systems flood with fake emergency calls, banks stall, panic spreads fast. But the US had practiced this exact scenario. Cyber Command isolates infected networks in hours. Targeting data is restored through backup satellite links. Military networks switch to hardened communication lines and dark fiber, buried cables that can't be easily intercepted or jammed. Then the US fires back. Undersea cables linking Europe begin to fail. Galileo's satellite signals degrade near the battlefield. NATO's drone feeds go dark. Spy satellites stop updating. European command centers lose contact with forward units. Targeting info goes stale. Suddenly, US cruise missiles are hitting exactly where NATO troops are hiding. Fuel depots erupt. Artillery is knocked out mid-reload. Columns stall in exposed terrain. The cyber war doesn't buy NATO an advantage. It speeds up their collapse. But speed isn't NATO's only enemy. Now the terrain turns against them. The Virginia coastline is flat, marshy, and full of choke points. Armor can't maneuver. Supply convoys bunch up. The Appalachians form a wall to the west, forcing any inland push into predictable paths. The Midwest is wide open, but that just makes it easy for US bombers and drones to hunt exposed columns. Bridges are blown, rivers flood, engineers crater roads. Meanwhile, America's road and rail system is fully operational. Fuel, ammo, food, everything flows inland without delay. Troops redeploy from coast to coast in under 72 hours. Even states like Colorado and Arizona begin sending units east, crossing an untouched national network. NATO, on the other hand, depends on a handful of ports and a few exposed convoys. Every ship they lose cuts deeper. Every delay stacks. By day 4, US submarines are sinking several cargo ships per night. The psychological toll, it's hard. Crews abandon tankers mid-ocean. Convoys scatter. Supplies slow to a trickle. NATO holds pieces of Norfolk, a few airfields in Florida, some ground near the Canadian border. But they've failed to secure a deepwater port, and without that, there's no resupply, no armor pipeline, no fuel deliveries. Just fragments of a plan collapsing in real time. The US floods the interior with National Guard units. Brigades from Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Tennessee reinforce air bases and armor divisions. Within days, the defenders outnumber the invaders, and NATO's running dry. Their F-35s are low on missiles they can't replace. Their tanks need diesel. Their artillery shells are almost gone. And the beach is still a bottleneck. Because the US isn't just holding the line, it's grinding them down. Then the counteroffensive begins. 3 full divisions, 1st Cavalry, 3rd Infantry, and 1st Armored, surge toward Norfolk. The 82nd Airborne secures the northern flank. Marines dig in across the south. HIMARS batter NATO's rear. A-10s and Apaches clean up what's left in between. It's the largest mechanized battle on US soil in over a century. French Leclerc and German Leopard 2 tanks fight hard. British paratroopers attempt to push back to the sea, but air support is gone. Communications are jammed. Logistics are finished. There's nowhere left to run. The NATO beachhead collapses. Florida falls. The northern push pulls back into Canada. Hundreds of NATO troops are cut off and captured. Some surrender on live feed. At sea, the HMS Prince of Wales takes a direct missile hit. The Charles de Gaulle is disabled by a drone swarm. NATO's remaining ships retreat, and US submarines chase them across the Atlantic. The war is over, and there's no question who won. The United States holds the field decisively. NATO's invasion collapses under its own weight. Their reliance on American tech backfires. Their supply lines fail. Their timing slips, and geography finishes the job. Was victory ever possible? Maybe, but only if they'd seized a port, grounded US air power, and forced a surrender in under a week. Instead, they lost the fleet, then the nerve, then the war. Now, imagine if the invaders weren't NATO, but some of the greatest armies in history attacking a modern US base. Check it out. It's on your screen now.